Dynamic Conversations, where families and stories come in all shapes and sizes. I come from a family of 12. You may be an only child. What matters is caring, sharing, and finding ways to relate to one another. Welcome to Family Dynamic Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Janice Kingsbury. Please take the time to let me know where you're watching from. Very interested to know around the world where everybody is and how they're feeling today. I think one of the best parts of this life is getting to meet different generations of people with different backgrounds and the way they experienced growing up. And it's so fascinating when one generation can talk to another generation and realize they have a lot in common, which always blows my mind, but it's so much fun to talk about. In a previous episode, I had a young man, Thomas Verdon Marshall, who talked about being from a divorced family and how that affected his life and what a great attitude he has now, and he's now in the military. And my family has a lot of military, and I am divorced, so common threads. And then another previous episode was with Dr. Yvonne Kay, who was a World War II survivor. She and I met in a writing class, so we had that in common. We had a crazy sense of humor. We had that in common. But she too has a great story. And today, joining me is another wonderful coworker who, speaking with her, just realized that we have a lot of stuff in common, and we're going to talk about that today. My guest today is also traveled to Alaska. I went to Alaska. She loves to take pictures and is a great photographer. I love photography and taking pictures. And on a sadder point, we both lost our father at a young age. So we're going to touch points on all of these different things and listen to her story and her experiences. So joining me today is Miss Caden Hubbell, who I work with at REI. Hi, Caden.
Hi,
How are you?
Janice.
Hi.
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm so good. So fun to be together.
So great to talk to you always.
So as I always do, I'll start with how many are in your family and what number are you in that family? And also, if you don't mind, where were you born?
Yeah, I was born here in Orange, California, which is where I live now. I have moved around a little bit, but my family has just stayed in Orange County. So I've always been within 20 minutes wherever we moved. I am one of two. I'm the youngest of two siblings, my older sister, Mason. And then growing up, it was just my mom and dad, my sister and I.
Okay. And we had talked briefly about what we found as similarities within siblings and within families. So do you feel like you're more similar to your sister or quite different from your sister?
My sister and I are very different. I would say we have common interests that I think we've picked up from our parents, but in the way that we process things, in the way that we respond to different situations is pretty noticeably different.
Do you find that you are more similar to your mother or father?
I find I'm more closely similar to my mom. And my sister more my dad. My dad was always more of an emotional and sensitive person. My mom, not that she isn't emotional or sensitive, but she's just a lot more like...
Less reactive,
and she thinks more logically, whereas my dad thinks more emotionally. So I found that my sister can pick up that a lot more from my dad, and I think I follow after my mom. But in the way that my parents process things, they're very level-headed. Both of them have always been very, okay, we need to think it through fully before. So
nice. I like it. I have I have 7 sisters and had 4 brothers. I am now down to 1 brother and Jenny, Donna, Cheryl, Marcia. Yeah, 7 sisters.
Wow.
I had to think about it. Too many. I'm getting so old, I don't even remember. But I know that with us too, there was the Irish-Scottish side, and then there's the German, Polish, French side. And one group that's almost down the middle too. It's like almost 6 and 6, I think. But there's me with the Irish side and the freckles and the light hair, and then the very dark haired like my dad. Although my mom had dark hair too, and my mom was the one that tanned. So my dad had the dark hair, but freckles. So you just never know what you're going to get in that bag of tricks. But, and I think we are all very different. I think I'm on the more sensitive spectrum with as far as my reactions are considered. And then I've had some very analytical and thought processing people too
Mm.
in the family that just thought, well, let's just calm down.
Mhm.
And I was like, but, you know. Or that's really funny, and don't you think? It's interesting if you go one by one with each family member, it's just so diverse.
Mm.
It's hard to believe that you can get so many personalities, but I guess that's the wonderful part of it too. So
Mm.
interesting.
So true.
Yeah. And right now, my daughter has two daughters, and it'll be great to see how they transform and
Yeah.
what they pick from mom or dad too. I can't
Yeah.
wait. Can't wait to
Totally.
watch. Yeah.
Remind me where you are in the 12.
I am number 11 out of
That's right.
12.
Okay.
Yeah. Older siblings. And just the one who, my youngest sister, she again has my dad's hair, but my mom's wonderful skin that can tan beautifully.
Mm.
So she got best of both, I think. I don't know. I got my mom's hair. I think I'm happy about that. You know,
I
the
think
gray
I'm
hasn't
happy about
started
that.
too terribly. And what do you picture as talents of your mom and talents of your dad? Can you talk a little bit about that?
I love my parents.
That's
I had a
awesome.
fantastic childhood, so that was such a blessing. I think some strengths that I got to see from my mom growing up was her diligence in one, keeping things clean
Oh,
and
yeah.
keeping things like organized in both like a physical sense of the house is always clean. You clean before people come over. I picked that up from her and very thankful for that. But also I think she was very clean and organized in her mind. So like a lot of things were very clear. Okay, there's very clear direction with different things. There is very clear, I want to get this done, and to do that, I'm going to do this. She was raised in a family of engineers, so I'm assuming that's probably
Oh,
where she picked a lot of that up, but always was able to express that in a very sweet and kind way. That made it really easy to follow. Made it
cool.
really
Yeah.
easy to appreciate that. Maybe not when I was a teenager, but definitely now that I'm older and able to see that,
Yeah.
I can see how beautifully she handled that growing
Nice.
up. And then from my dad, I think a big strength of his was his ability to teach.
Oh,
He was an artist and
nice.
really loved nature, as well as my mom loved nature. My dad was an artist, and so he always saw the beauty behind everything and wanted to explain that and explain that really wonderfully. So whether that be taking us to art museums and explaining to us how something was created or what impact this painting had on whatever era of time, was like, wow, like that's actually super interesting. Like I remember
Yeah.
thinking like as a kid, like, wow, like I actually had no idea that something that someone created like in their garage or what have you had such a big impact.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
in
I
the
love
same
that.
way, just his ability to, he was always the one that sat down with us, my sister and I at the dinner table to finish our math homework or
Oh,
help
nice.
proofread for essays, different things throughout our childhood.
Very
Um,
cool.
and so he was able to like articulate things that had a lot of meaning and wonder to them to my sister and I in such a like gentle and like easy way to follow.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, I love that. Very cool. So he was an artist, and did your mom have a creative side too?
No,
No.
she always jokes about that. We always
Really?
joke about that as a family. But she has a creative side, but just not in the physical sense.
Yeah. Bringing it
um,
out to fruition. Okay.
yes,
Yeah.
my mom is a lot more introverted and just kind of keeps to herself, just does her thing. And my dad was always like the life of the family. Like he was a
Interesting.
big jokester. He was super silly. He would sing songs and create lots of different things and encourage us to create different things.
Yeah, that's kind of similar with my mom and dad too, because my mom was a registered nurse.
Mm.
So again, very good at cleaning and making sure that things were taken care of so that A, we wouldn't get hurt or B, we just knew where things were. So that was, yeah, that was her brain too. And I think my mom showed us a few of her art projects we found in these closets. We'd bring it out to her and go, "Did you draw this, Mom? It's a beautiful tree in the garden," and things like that. She goes, "Oh yeah, that was a long time ago." So she just kind of dismissed that stuff. But I'm sure my brother Steve, who was an artist, right back here, that's his
Oh,
painting behind
wonderful.
me. We'll tell you that story another. So she had that creative side too, but she didn't bring it out. She didn't
Mm.
talk about it much, and it's so interesting. And then my dad too had a creative side where he, again, found drawings but never talked about it. But my dad had a funny side, and he was the jokester too, and he'd comb his hair off to the side and they would dance close to cheek, and my mom would just laugh and go along with it, but then she'd just say, "Oh, you're so silly," kind of thing. Brush it off,
That's so
So,
sweet.
and he was very athletic, but could talk to anybody. But my mom could talk to anybody too. So I think I got that from both sides.
Hmm.
So, but similar, that she wasn't, I think she was be considered introverted, but she had no problem discussing hard topics with people, kind of thing, I guess.
Yeah, my mom, I'm starting to laugh thinking about this, but because my friends and I talk about it, because we love this part of my mom. She is a very bold woman. She'll say what's on her mind, but it's obviously done in a respectful way, but she'll tell you how it is. So that was always a fun aspect, especially in my teenage years, because my mom could be more like a friend, even though she wasn't telling jokes or like doing bits like my dad would do. She would have really fun conversation, and she just added a little extra spice of you don't really know what she's gonna say.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like to keep people guessing. That's great. Well, I can't wait to meet her sometime.
Oh, I would love that.
Yeah. So then how were you inspired by the outdoors? You said both parents love the outdoors. Did you guys take a lot of trips, camping trips, or what did you do?
So that is always a funny question to answer, because by the way that I am and my parents' love for nature, we never really did that as a family. My parents lived in Orange County or by the beach for about 35 years collectively. Throughout I'm 21, my sister is 23, almost 24. I can't even recall one time that we went to the beach as a family. We would go hiking, and my dad enjoyed mountain biking a lot. So we would try and join him if we could keep up as we got older. But we went on one family camping trip when I was like maybe 8 years old. So actually that hobby and interest developed more after high school, or I guess late high school for me. So I've really only been hiking or backpacking / camping for a few years. Before I was born though, before my sister and I were born, they did all sorts of fun things. They went to a bunch of different national parks and would go hiking all the time and enjoy all of that. But I think that slowed down a lot when they had kids. Yeah,
Makes sense. So that love of nature is still comes from them, because that blood is in you. And I'm sure that passion, plus if your dad was an artist and he showed you all these beautiful paintings, I'm sure that inspired you too to kind of go out and see all that on your own.
Absolutely. And like thinking about just like what we would talk about on hikes or on walks when we were kids, talking about different flowers or different trees. And my parents, I remember them asking like, "Oh, like, what do you notice about it?" So appreciating it further in that way.
That's great.
And I think especially my dad picked that up a lot from his mom. My Granny Linda, she had such a deep appreciation for nature. She loved flowers and flower fields and trees, and she named her cat Poppy, like the California poppies, because those are her favorite.
So pretty.
And so I feel like it goes, my dad's side of the family, a lot of them are artists, just as my mom's side, a lot of them are engineers. And so I think capturing the detail of that and the appreciation for that longer really throughout the generations, I think trickled down to my sister and I, and even my mom in that.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I truly believe that our DNA still holds on to those same kind of talents and interests, and I think that's great. So then you said in high school you started enjoying the outdoors. Did you go with friends? Did they go camping, or how did you get out backpacking?
Yeah, I would go. We would go hiking every once in a while, like after
Okay.
church or just like on the weekend with my friends. But they weren't very long and they weren't very far away.
Okay.
But when I was 17, my friend Ashlyn asked me to go backpacking with her. She wanted to take me out on my first trip. So she helped me get all my gear, and I had gotten a bigger hiking backpack for my 17th birthday. So I packed that up and we went to Joshua Tree and just did like an overnight trip, and I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. So I continued to kind of work into that hobby a little bit more. Did that a lot after I took a gap year after high school, and so was able to kind of focus on camping and hiking more than I had been able to before.
And then you sent me all these beautiful pictures of Alaska. Tell me how that all happened.
Yes. Essentially, I took a gap year after high school and didn't really know what I wanted to do. I had a really hard last 2 years of high school that just made it difficult to have much motivation to really do anything, or I kind of got burnt out of where I was.
Okay.
So I had planned to move away and try and figure that out.
So you actually moved to Alaska.
So I was planning to move to Montana.
Okay.
And I had some plans figured out, and a job and a car and a place to live all worked out. And then my friend Ashlyn, the same one that invited me to go backpacking that one time, hey, I'm going to Alaska for this like seasonal job. So I'm going to move up there for the summer in Denali, and I think that this is like right up your alley. Like, I think you should do this. And I was like, okay. So I applied for the job and had an interview, got the job, and I was like, okay. Then like, I think it was like 5 months later, I got the job in December and then moved in May and was there for a few months just over the summer.
Bold.
Yeah, I didn't know anybody. I had never been there. I was like, you know what? I'm not doing anything else. Yeah. So, and I had planned to start school the fall of that same year, 2022 this is. Okay. And so I was like, you know what? I'm not doing anything. I've been hanging out with my friends all year, so what's the summer without them? It's going to be great.
Let's try something different.
Yeah, why not?
You said you were alone. Did Ashlyn not go up there?
So she went to Denali, and I actually chose to go to a different seasonal job in Alaska. So I met up with her for 4th of July. We went on a hike in Denali, but I lived about 10 or 11 hours south of her. Wow. So I lived on the Kenai Peninsula, and I worked at the Kenai Princess Lodge.
Nice.
Yeah.
I've seen that because of working in the travel agency. I saw pamphlets and all kinds of people going to, how do you say the name of it again?
Kenai.
Kenai.
Yeah.
And Denali. I took a cruise to Alaska, so it was very structured, but I got to see Skagway and a couple other, and Anchorage, and started in Vancouver. So it was absolutely stunning. So I want to talk about some of these pictures. Well, let's just start with this gorgeous picture.
Which one?
Okay. So I'm going to hold it up. Can you see that with the fishing pole?
Yeah.
Okay. Tell me the story of the fishing pole and that beautiful area.
Okay, it's actually a pretty fun story. This will tell you a little bit about me at that time of my life. So keep in mind, I was 19 when I lived in Alaska. Again, I didn't know anybody, had never been there. So I had a lot of trust in my friends that I made that also worked at the lodge, and that, like, my roommate and then the girls that lived down the hall, we made friends and did all of our adventures together. Cool. So So that photo is on Ketchimek Bay outside of Homer, Alaska on the Kenai Peninsula. So we didn't have a car, or we didn't have a way really to get around at our leisure. So if we wanted to go hiking, we had to either hitchhike or walk there. Two of my friends went.
Very daring. I love it. Yeah.
Two of my friends hitched a ride with one of the cooks from the restaurant at the place, the lodge, and went out to go hiking by this lake that we loved, and then decided that they were going to hitchhike back. Now, this man came by in a truck and a little dog. This man's name was Dwayne, and his little dog's name was Blaze. And he picked him up. He's probably like early 70s. Okay. And then and took him back to the lodge, they met up with me after my shift was over and was like, hey, we're going to go stay at Dwayne's house and we're going to go fishing with him. And this is going to be at the end of the month. So take your request work off for this trip. And I was like, who's Dwayne? He lives in Homer, which is about 2.5 hours away from where we lived. So I was like, okay, we don't have a car. Dwayne, I don't know Dwayne. You don't seem like you know Dwayne because you met him 20 minutes ago. And so, but I was like, okay, I've never been fishing before. Like, let's see how this goes. So after our shift, sometime in June, after our shift got done at like 10:30, we started driving. We borrowed a coworker's car and drove to Dwayne's house. Ended up getting there at around 2 to 3 in the morning. So he was asleep. Yeah. And he left the door unlocked for us. We went into the house, slept in his guest room. I think there was 5 of us. In his guest room, on the floor, on the bed, and then woke up and he greeted us in his kitchen, making breakfast for us. I was like, hello, Dwayne. Nice to meet you. And so we also keep in mind we had to be up at 5 because he wanted to be on the water before it got too hot, which it didn't really get too hot in Alaska.
But you just got there at 2 or 3.
So true. So that was really fun. And so then we got on the boat, and this boat is just a sight to see. But we got on this boat and we trusted Dwayne, and he took us out to the middle of the bay. Keep in mind also, he set the waypoint, the little GPS on the boat, and then went to go take a nap and said, you know what, you guys can drive the boat. Just go to this point. You guys take it from here. No worries. Super trusting in you. And I said, okay. Super fun. So we got to drive the boat out, and then he taught us to go halibut fishing, which was just a joy. And then once we were out for the day, we came back and he taught us how to fillet and package our fish, and then we made fish and chips back at his house and then drove back that same night. So
what an experience.
Yeah. So
this picture is off the boat?
That is off of the boat. That's my fishing rod on Ketchimek Bay. If you can look in the middle of it, very thin line is the horizon, the mountains of western Alaska. In the middle of there is Mount Redoubt and Mount Iliamna, I think is the next. They're both volcanoes.
Wow.
Yeah. Super rad.
What a great experience.
So I went fishing and stayed at a man's house that I didn't actually know until I got there. That was great.
But it worked out so well.
Worked out fantastic.
Friends. You're with friends. You're not alone. Oh, that's fantastic.
We're all under 20 years old. It was great.
He's like, grab the boat.
Yep.
Go ahead.
So
I'm going to just take a nap over here.
Yep.
Love it. Well, that's very cool. Very cool. I have to show this one because it's stunning. So I'll upload these guys, don't worry, but you'll get a better view of it. So that looks like an orca to me.
Yeah, that was an orca. So that was my first time on the water in Alaska. We went as like an employee field trip, and they took us out to go see a glacier, which a little bit about me. I love snow and I love ice. And so I love learning about it. And that trip was my first time seeing a glacier in person, which I cried. It was beautiful.
It's stunning. It really is. I
Yeah.
understand what you're saying completely.
Yeah. And so we looked onto the side of the boat and there were some orcas that greeted us. And that was a picture that I got of one that was pretty cool.
So cool. Oh my God. I'm like, that's an orca.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay. But I love this. So this is you camping, obviously.
Yes.
And is that with the same group of friends?
Same group of friends.
Nice.
That is also a fun story that
Cool.
I'll be briefer than last time. But we decided to go when I visited my friend Ashlyn in Denali. It actually super rained us out. Our campsite there was a thunderstorm and our tent was horrible, so we were filling up with water in our tent and it was like the worst experience ever. And so we decided that we were gonna leave and go to another part of Alaska and explore that. So we decided in the middle of the night to just start driving. Of course, the sun doesn't set, so that photo is actually taken.
Really?
I think that photo is taken at 11:45 p.m.
Oh my God!
So
at 11:45 p.m.
So those are my friends in our coworkers' car. And that's our stinky Coleman tent that we borrowed that was not waterproof. And so we drove to Wrangell St. Elias National Park, which is just the most beautiful place. And there's only 2 roads to get in. There's Nesbitt Road, which goes 11 miles in from the north end. And then there's McCarthy Road, which goes from the west end 60 miles into the dead center of the park. And so then that will take you to McCarthy and Kennecott, which is an old mining town. And so that is us at Base Camp Kennecott, which is where everyone stays. And then you have to take the footbridge over the river to get to the glacier, which we ended up hiking on.
Yes.
So
that's so cool. So I am going to get the glacier picture. One of them. So is this the one that you hiked to?
Yes, that is the one that we hiked to.
And God.
So that is Root Glacier.
So beautiful.
In McCarthy, Alaska. That is I think it's a Mirage. That's what they're called, but the water pool, it's literally that blue. It's like Powerade blue. So we got to sit and have our lunch, and our guide for the hike, she got some water out of that pool and brought a little jet boil and made us hot chocolate and coffee on the glacier, and we got to stir it with ice axes. It was a super fun experience. Of course, I loved it because I love glaciers and ice, and I was like, this is the coolest thing ever.
I love it.
So
cool.
That is like probably my favorite thing I've ever done.
I think the color of the ice and snow was the first thing that it just blew my mind. Because I grew up in Minnesota, so I saw enough ice and snow that was either white or dirty. It was never blue. So when I saw that, it just blew my mind because I thought, where is that color coming from? But now I see this pool, so it totally makes sense. This glacier,
yes,
that's completely different.
Completely different.
Yes. Now, does that at that point that you were there, and this is a couple of years ago, you said?
This was in 2022.
So whoever was taking you there, did you have like a guide or someone who had been there before to tell you that ice had been receding now, that you're seeing rocks and stuff?
Yeah, so that photo was taken in Kenai Fjords National Park, which if you ever see my name tag at work, that is my favorite place to go.
Nice.
So
makes sense.
Yeah. I got to go on a flight in a little biplane at the end of my summer there because if you work there seasonally, if anyone listening wants to work someplace seasonally, go to Alaska because you can do almost anything for free or extremely discounted. So this was a really expensive flight that I paid very little money for. and got to go with, it was just the pilot and then this lovely older couple that I got to know on the flight. And it was about an hour and a half. And so just flying over glaciers, because you can only hike in or fly into Kenai Fjords National Park. You can't drive. So it was just incredible. That was one of the glaciers that created the fjord, which is basically a valley basically a valley that's carved by a glacier. So it had receded pretty far back.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And this is taken from the plane.
Yes.
Oh my God. Love it. How gorgeous. And then you can see with this picture how craggy and cracked up, and that's just crazy.
So that is taken, we were turning, and that's actually an above shot of the glacier below us. All of those black rocks actually carved all of those lines and crags in the glacier because they absorb heat, which causes the ice to melt faster, creating those divots. For scale, if you show that photo back, one of the smaller chunks off of the side, if you see anything floating, one of the smaller ones is about the size of a car. So that'll put it into kind of perspective, just how big it is. Yeah.
That's fantastic. So this one, I'm not seeing much snow in, but it's still a beautiful shot. I'm thinking this is from the plane also.
Yes, that's also from the plane. That is all glacier runoff. And so obviously creating that water and that bright teal is from all of the rocks that have mixed with the ice and have been grinded down, have created this glacial silt that fills the water to make it more opaque, which brings out that bright teal color. And the different elements that have been in those rocks or in that ice as it's compacted over the years have washed on that beach to create kind of that vibrant sand color.
Wow.
Which is really rad.
So gorgeous. So listeners out there, let us know if you've been to Alaska and what your favorite part of Alaska was. I would love to know that. And then with all this travel in Alaska, were you able to go somewhere that you could hear the glaciers calving and breaking off?
Yeah, so on that flight, I unfortunately got to see one or two glaciers break off, which was obviously sad after the fact, but in the moment, it's actually a really unique experience because you get to see that deep, rich blue from the inside of the glacier because obviously the ice pulls in and absorbs all the blue light refraction, which is why it's that deep, rich blue. That is just gorgeous to see and a really crazy sound to hear in person.
Yes.
Because it's so loud and grand. It's crazy.
We were on the ship and I think it was Glacier Bay where it was crystal cruises, and it's a small enough ship where you can pull in just a bit, and off in the distance are these glaciers, and they look like, skyscrapers. They're huge. And at the time, God, this was decades ago. You can sit on your ship and you're just looking at these glorious views of the ice, and you hear this crack, 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 and then this thunderous breakage, and it kind of takes your breath away.
Yeah.
And as you said, I'm like, oh, wait, what's happening? It's glorious and just tragic at the same time. That you're like, I'm so thankful to be experiencing this, but yikes, that just means more of that's just going to keep happening.
For sure.
So, yeah, you're lucky to view it, but realizing how more important it is for us to take care of this planet, because that's just going to keep disappearing, unfortunately, unless whatever ice age decides to come back. I don't know. Who knows what's going to happen? But, okay, so we're going to end on this last picture, which I think is just beautifully put together. And where is that?
So that is a beach called Waikiki Beach off of
Really?
the Kenai Lake, which is the main lake that we went to. I lived in a town called Cooper Landing. So if anyone is listening that has been to Cooper Landing, that's where I lived.
Yay.
And so we are able to walk there. I think we took bikes there or we got dropped off somehow. We might have hitchhiked. I don't really remember, but that was my first camping trip that I took while I lived in Alaska. So we were in our hammocks. We got to sleep in our little hammocks and make a little fire on the beach, and it was just beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My husband is a big hammocker, and when we lived in Pennsylvania, they used to have these things called mahas, which was something to do with hammocks. He would know. We'll talk. Bill, I'll talk to you about that in a future episode because he could talk forever about these. He made his own hammock,
Oh,
and
that's
yeah,
rad.
it's pretty cool. Yeah, so he loves to sleep in his hammock, and when he goes camping, that's the best. So you don't have this hard ground, and you don't have to worry about all the setup and everything. That's pretty cool. But it's a beautifully put together shot. Plus, I love all the colors of the hammocks and everything. It's really cool. So, do you have any upcoming trips planned? Anything that you're working on, working
None
towards?
planned that I can remember right now. I'm getting into a pretty busy season with the holidays and stuff. We'll see.
Yeah,
I might squeeze one in here or there.
wouldn't
I'm
surprise me.
hoping to go. I'm hoping to go car camping. I just finished my setup yesterday, as you know.
Yeah, how'd it go?
It was fantastic, and I
Yeah,
literally just am stopping myself from getting outside.
can't
I
wait. Huh?
I cannot wait to use it. Yeah,
So, what did you end up getting? What was
and
the most important thing you got?
the sleeping pad, the Hest sleeping pad,
Oh, nice.
because now I can sleep comfortably in my car. um,
Oh, nice.
yeah.
Well, that's nice.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's when you have that surrounding of your car, you know you're safe. Even if it rains, it doesn't matter.
Exactly.
I can turn on the
Exactly.
heat if I want to turn on the heat. Or whatever. It's nice. I like that. Okay, cool. Now, you said you had a blog. Do you still do any blogging, or is that kind of off to the side for a
I
while?
do blog. I don't post any of it. It's just for
Okay.
me. It's just for me right now.
Yeah, so you're
Um,
writing about stuff. Just free
yeah,
for you to write? Cool.
I love to write. I write mostly about, well, it's kind of split between gear and like gear review and why I like
Oh,
it and
nice.
appreciate the science of it.
Cool.
But it's also just my, I guess, response to what I experience when I'm outside.
Yeah.
With different trips, I feel like I get a big, I don't know, I just get a big moment out of each time I spend outside. And so just kind of writing how that makes me feel and what I think about it.
Great.
Yeah.
I love that. I used to journal all the time. I don't as much, but now I find with these podcasts and whatever, I'm writing a ton just to make sure I get my head on straight and know what I'm going to talk about. So very cool. Okay. We are going to now move into a little bit more tender part of our lives with the one event that is not fun to have in common, but that we do have in common. And that is the passing of our fathers at a young age. So you said it was 2 years ago. So that was when you were
I was 19.
19. I was 18. And I'll probably have a whole episode just about my dad and the fun and tragic part of it. So my father dealt with heart disease for at least 4 years, if I remember correctly. So those are the 4 high school years. A lot of the time during high school, and it started where it was, I think my dad had a slight heart attack, but that took him to the doctor and found out that he had some blockages. And so let's change your diet and let's do all these medications and whatnot, and we'll take it from there. So over the years, you would feel like, okay, we got to be home and take care of dad. And yet, when I think about my high school years, I remember going out partying. I remember having fun at the games. I was a cheerleader. I don't ever think I remember thinking at school, my dad's so sick until probably senior year or something. But it was all those years of him in and out of the hospital during high school.
Sure.
So he ended up having like quadruple bypass or something and became weaker and more frail. And towards the end, he some of his naval buddies. He was a naval test pilot during World War II. So, you got to be pretty tough and have your stuff together so that so then when he's sick and frail and his naval buddies are like, well, come Bert, let us come over and, just shoot the breeze or whatever. He's like, no, I want those guys to remember what I was like then. I don't want them to see me now, kind of thing. That was tough. And then I had a friend of mine, Debbie Monlock, at the time of high school. She lost her dad in a car accident. So he was just here and then gone. I don't know which is worse, seeing your dad slowly die of this disease or enjoy his presence so much and then suddenly he's gone and out of your life. That part, and let me know, listeners, if you have lost a parent or a father or mother, and if it was a long, drawn-out thing, or if it was just quick and tragic, and how you're dealing with it. I'm probably still dealing with it. I don't know. It's just like weird things will come up and trigger me.
Sure.
But I loved his taste in music. Like we talked about, he was the funny guy, storyteller, and I missed that part of it. But I do believe that both he and my mom instilled this idea of observing what's going on, appreciating it, finding the humor. And then with my mom, it's about faith, just things will work out, believe in God, and just do what you got to do to keep going forward, kind of thing. Being more recent for you, I'm sure it's difficult, but was it a drawn out thing or was it a quick thing for you when your dad passed?
Yeah, he passed really suddenly. Essentially, not to get too into the detail of it, but he was a really avid cyclist. He was really healthy. He ate the right foods and would exercise all the time. But, he went on a bike ride, came home, did some work. He worked from home, felt some chest pain, put himself on the ground to try and calm it down, and then called for my mom, and they took him to the hospital. He then had been rushed into emergency heart surgery. But before that, I got to chat with him on the phone. He talked to my sister and he talked to his sister as well. And so he went in at like 10 p.m. and then at around 6 in the morning, the next morning, he had passed in surgery. So
sorry.
Yeah, I am too.
Yeah, that's really tough.
So I lived away at the time. I lived in Idaho. And my sister lives and lived then as well in Washington, D.C. So we were flown out. November 19th is actually the day, so it's coming up.
Coming up.
Yeah, the week before Thanksgiving. So our family bought us plane tickets for the morning of the 19th and flew us home, and we were not told until we got home. So I got home before my sister, and my mom and my aunt was there already, and they told me, and then my sister came in a few hours later and told her. Wow. So I didn't actually know until I got home. I had a feeling.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, that's so hard. I'm so sorry to hear that. It really makes you think how fragile this life is and how we have to appreciate who we appreciate and let them know that, because you don't know from one day to the next. And I started creating a gratitude journal just recently, which is silly, but at the same time, it's just like my dad died when he was 59. How old was your dad?
56. 56. Yeah.
When I passed his age of passing, I was like, okay, whew. But at the same time, it's like every day now has to be kind of like a gift, and don't squander it. And when you meet young, beautiful people like you, let's talk. Have some fun. Tell me about your life.
Oh, you're sweet.
This short, it just goes by way too fast. And I'm noticing that with these little grandbabies that Harper's going to be 3 soon, and little Kinsley is just turned 1 not long ago. And you got to appreciate it now and forever.
Absolutely.
So what were you doing in Idaho?
So I went to school at University of Idaho for about 3 months, not even a full semester. That's why I pulled out of school, because my dad passed. So I went for until obviously November and then pulled out of school, then moved back in late January of 2023 for until like May or June of 2023, and then moved back to California. So I moved in with my friends in that spring of 2023.
And then are you living in your family home, or is this just, because I know you said your mom moved away. Where's she at?
So she moved recently to Phoenix, Arizona. And so I'm in my apartment. I live here alone. It's a little studio.
Okay.
So I've lived here for about 8 months. So.
Okay. And how are you finding the process of losing your dad and that? Do you talk about it with your friends? Do you talk about it with your family? Or do you just kind of still hold it inside? It's still fresh. I mean,
it is still fresh. It hasn't even been 2 years yet.
Yeah.
So.
Right.
I don't really talk about it with I'm like super open to talking about it, which is great because that's helpful for me. I process a lot of things externally, so it's helpful to be talked through it. I have wonderful friends, and they have wonderful parents as well that have been very kind and generous to me in opening their homes for dinner or just to chat or to watch a movie or what have you. That's been really sweet. I think throughout the process of just the past almost 2 years, it wasn't really until about 8 months ago that I started kind of processing on my own what happened, mostly because when I moved back to California, I moved back to be with my mom because she obviously lived alone, and that was really hard to process that.
Oh gosh, yeah.
And like her living alone and her eating meals by herself and coming home to an empty house that used to be so full. My dad would always play music, so we always had music on. So a very quiet, somber house was just really sad to think about.
Yes.
That I moved back to be with her.
Sure.
And yeah, I didn't really start processing kind of my own grief and my own understanding and acceptance of losing my dad until I moved into this apartment, because I was so focused on my mom and helping her put another foot ahead, and it's a lot to take on. And my sister lived across the country, which she could do what she could, but so she's set up out there, and so it was just too much a lot fell on me. I had to step up to, which was good, and I learned a lot from it, and I learned a lot about myself and my mom and that. But it's an interesting dynamic to change and grow into, especially just being my sister and I.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a lot.
And it's interesting because I had a lot of family around, obviously, but as soon as I turned 21, I had moved away. And it had nothing to do, I don't think, with my dad passing. But when I think about it, and as I've thought about it, when I decided to move, it was just a friend and I, and my brother Mike lived in Culver City. And I just said, I need a complete change. And maybe because from age 18 to 21, I just felt like life is short. I don't want to live in Minnesota. I'm so tired of the winters. You like ice and snow. I can't stand it. But that's okay. And so I thought, well, Southern California is where I want to be. If Mike can move out there, I can move out there. But the time of processing it, again, like you, I had some really good friends that sometimes we would talk about it, mostly not. And then with the family, every time you could bring stuff up and anybody would be willing to talk about it or cry with you or laugh with you or whatever it took, kind of thing. So I guess that really helped to process that. And my mom, I found my mom to be very stoic about it. And she had always said, I just can't cry anymore. And I don't know, with, having 12 babies was like, you bumped your knee. Got it. Okay, you're fine. or she did cry a lot in the beginning and didn't anymore. I don't know. But she just also thought, well, God is putting me through this for a reason. I just trust in the fate of whatever he has in front of me as a plan. And I'll, with each passing thing, I'll deal with it and pray and process it that way. So I guess her faith kind of grounded me into believing that I have to believe in myself and I have to do what I have to do to get through this life, to get through these processes of death. And it wasn't easy, but I'm glad that you are finding a way to still pursue what you want to pursue, and yet have the compassion to help and take care of your mom. I mean, that's huge. That's a huge thing. And I'm sure your dad is watching and just very thankful that you did that, because obviously he loves you all to pieces. And
Thank you.
I still believe he's around you. So
I wish he was right here.
yeah, I'm sure he is. He's right there. I know he is. I can just see him right there now.
Hey.
Do you have a picture of him?
I do. I can send you one.
Can I see it? Oh, send it to me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll put that in.
I have an old picture from when I was a little kid that I keep on my
good.
dresser.
Yeah.
This is me and my dad.
Oh, so cute.
That was in our front yard.
Love it. Love it. So yes, send that to me and I'll put it, if that's okay. I'll put it in there and just show how wonderful he is. So do you have some holidays that you do like? You said you're not a big Halloween fan. What's your favorite holiday?
I'm not a big fan of holidays in general. I mean, I think probably my favorite is Christmas, but I do not like Thanksgiving. I don't like Halloween. I'm not a massive 4th of July person. I like Easter. I don't know if it's just because we're not awesome cooks in the family. So, and I grew up a very picky eater, and so I just did not like the food that was offered to me on those occasions. So
turkey and cranberry.
Like, what is all of this? But I do like Christmas. I think that sweet spot between Thanksgiving and Christmas is probably my favorite. I would say my favorite holiday is New Year's, because I've always had fun tradition for New Year's. So
good. Mostly with friends or family?
Kind of both. Growing up, we would always go to my dad's best friend's house and we would celebrate New Year's there, or they would come to us at our house, and that was always fun. But in recent tradition, I've been in like the same friend group for many years. And so this next New Year's will, I think, be our third or fourth, but we have a steak dinner at midnight. We all gather and we hang out for the night, and then we make like a big elaborate steak dinner with potatoes and asparagus. And last year I made bread, and we had all sorts of fun drinks and stuff, and all eat together at one big table to celebrate the New Year as our first meal together.
I love that.
Yeah.
What kind of bread do you make? Or did you make?
For that time, I made like a rosemary, kind of like a crusty, like restaurant kind of bread.
Sounds delicious.
It's fantastic. So,
how long have you been making bread? Was that your first time?
That was not my first time. I've been making bread for a little bit. Moving into this place, probably making bread for like a year now, maybe a year and a half. But moving into here, I don't get to do that as often because I don't have a Dutch oven here. My mom had the Dutch oven. So I have to go to my friend's house who has Dutch ovens and then bake 2 loaves so I can leave one there and take one for me.
That's nice of you. I used to make quick bread like that in the Dutch oven because I just love that crust. Oh, so good.
So good.
I haven't done it for a while though, because I feel like when I make it, I just want to every hour.
So good. It's so good.
Have another big slice. Ooh.
And if you make your own butter too, your homemade bread and butter.
Wait, you make your own butter?
It's super easy to make your own butter.
Really?
Yeah.
We'll have to get that recipe.
Mm-hmm. We'll have to hang out, Janice.
Looking forward to it. You have a lot to teach me. I love it. So we're gonna just end kind of like on this note. So any big goals that you have right now in this moment? If you're thinking 3, 5 years down the road, are you going to go back to school, or is there something else you want to do with your life right now? Do you want to go back to school?
If I do go back to school, I feel confident in saying it won't be a proper university. It would be more like a trade school, or
Okay.
I'd probably get my associates if I did that somewhere. It wouldn't be like a proper 4-year attendance school. I want to be in 3 to 5 years. I'm not really on track for a goal, really. I'm just kind of enjoying the things I'm taking part in right now, especially at church and in ministry, and really loving that. I could probably see myself either working in a church. I would love to work in a church. That would be a dream.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. Or I would love to be like a hiking guide.
Yeah, I can see that too.
Yeah, like a missionary hiking guide would be cool. We could teach people about Jesus, talk about Jesus, while enjoying the great outdoors.
Yeah. And where does the strong faith come from? Is that something handed down too from generations, or in your mom and dad?
No,
When did that?
I went to a private Lutheran school in preschool and kindergarten because just a lot of the schools in the area weren't great. So my parents put my sister and I in private school, but then we switched to public school for my first grade and her third grade years. Moving forward, we were in public school, but we never talked about God. My dad was not a believer. My mom is, and is just kind of exploring more of that now that she's older and is understanding it more. She was raised very Catholic, and so her extended family is super Catholic. So I just started going to church in 7th grade with my dear friend Megan, and so now I still go to that same church. I now intern there,
Nice.
and I spent a lot of time in student ministry there.
That's great.
Yeah, I've met a wonderful, wonderful community that takes care of me very well, and just shows a deep and genuine love. That you just can't find anywhere else, which is really rad.
Yeah. Well, I'm so grateful that you found that.
Yeah.
And truly believe that there are people out there willing to help. And for those listening too, if you are grieving or if you are going through a tougher time, and let's say you've never belonged to a church, or let's say you grew up in a religious family and yet found yourself moving away from that a little bit, you find wherever you can find strength, obviously that's where you should go. And please reach out if you are grieving and you don't know how to process and you are alone. There are millions of wonderful people out there just willing to sit and listen. If you want to comment below and just say, I need help, I don't know where to find help, and let us know where you're at. And I'm sure we can hook up different organizations that are genuinely interested in just helping you get to that next step and process how you have to process. And there's no rules. There's just no rules on how you're supposed to act, what you're supposed to do, or how you're supposed to feel, because everyone has a unique experience with that grief, and it's not an easy road for anybody. So I'm so happy that you have that community, and I find because of that community that you are so approachable, you're so much fun. I love your sense of humor. I love working with you. And if that's what helps you remain that way, then I applaud you staying with that. And I hope whatever comes your way and good opportunities, that it all works out to what you want to do. So,
you're sweet.
Thanks so much for being willing to talk about things. And things aren't easy, and you made it easy. And I had so much fun today at learning about your wonderful Alaska experience and people. So how fun is this? Anything else that you said you might have some questions for me, or was it just about the sibling stuff and we're good?
Yeah, I wanted to know mostly about, jumping back to grieving your dad and at the age that you were, how did your familial relationships did they change? Did they alter your relationships with your siblings or your relationship with your mom? What did that look like at such a similar age to me? But obviously I'm sure it's different when you have 11 siblings.
Yeah. Yeah. I found that how strong my mom was and her faith was.
Mm.
I felt the need to make sure she was okay, and I think most of the family did. And so it kind of became a common goal to make sure that mom was taken care of. And I mean, she was a strong woman. Let's see, and he died when I was 18. So she was in her late 50s. She was 4 years younger than my dad. So she was only, 55. So it wasn't like she was frail and she didn't have any heart health issues. She got breast cancer when she was 80.
Oh,
So,
wow.
yeah, and survived that. She died at 101.
Wow.
So I never felt that mom was really frail. She was very strong. She was the matriarch and she was the one with guidance and support if you needed it. But as far as with my siblings, my two older brothers, Mike and Steve, I think stepped in to kind of become the father figure. And my brother Mike was in California. I moved in with him, so he became the father figure in my life while I lived with him for just a few weeks, couple of months maybe, got my own place, and then I had him to kind of guide me. And then I think with my sisters, I don't feel like it changed. The only thing that changed, it probably brought us closer together.
Mm.
I just find that we had to depend on each other to kind of help us get through this. And I'm hoping you and what is your sister's name?
Mason.
Mason, that you and Mason really find strength within each other because that helps tremendously. Like I said, I had a friend whose father had passed, so a very strong group of friends there. If I couldn't talk to my family, I had them. But I don't think anything changed except that we really appreciated the time we did have with our dad. We talk a lot when we got together and we visited a lot together. I would go back to Minnesota a lot. And whenever we would talk about dad, we made it fun, or my brothers would tell us, well, dad wasn't always that happy go lucky guy. So
Mm.
I think the experience of it rocks you to your core. It rocked me to my core. I think I was probably searching for a father figure outside of my brothers
Mm.
in people I dated and things like that. So it makes a tremendous impact.
Mm.
But as far as the dynamic within the family, I think that brought us closer together. Now with
Mm.
my mom's passing, which was 2022, that seems like now we're all much older. I feel like I could pick up the phone and talk to any of them and we would still not have a problem. But it seems to be kind of separating where we feel like we got to take care of ourselves. And we know we still have that backup plan of talking to family and people are around us that love us. But she was the glue.
Mm.
And now that that glue has kind of gone away, it's kind of dissipating. And I think people are just taking care of their own families and realizing, yep, life is short. So yeah, I know you're there. Thanks for calling. How you doing? Okay, good. So, so we have other people now that we lean on, I think, a lot more. But there's definitely strength there. If I needed to talk to anybody, they would always pick up the phone. That's for
Mm.
sure. Yeah.
And did you have any siblings? It being is kind of a separate question, but
That's okay.
being in such a big family, did you have closer ties to like a certain sibling or a certain like age range of siblings, or was it just kind of like everyone was friends?
Yes, I definitely felt closer to my next oldest sister, Jeannie, who I think because we have similar ways of processing stuff. She and I are both very sensitive. My younger sister, Anne, was athletic and outgoing and quite the extrovert. And she and I would laugh a lot together, and we have a very strong bond. And yeah, I think with each different sibling, there's a different type of bond
Mm.
because there's certain aspects of each of us that we can relate to, and there's another aspect that we just don't have a lot of common ground. My oldest sister, well, she's the oldest sister now. My oldest sister, Barbara, she was deaf at the age of, 2 or 3.
Oh, wow.
And she was 17 or 18 years older than myself. And so she, by the time she was going into school, she was going to a private school for the deaf. And I didn't get to know her much. She came back and lived in Mankato and found it difficult to talk about anything because I didn't learn sign language because she was gone and out of the house. And then my next oldest sister, Mary, she and I were very similar in appreciation of certain things, art. And I mean, I think we all appreciate art, but Mary and I had a similar sense of humor. And I felt she was kind of a mother figure for me, even though because I moved to California and then she moved to California, Northern California after a few years. And so we would be connecting all the time. And then I moved to Pennsylvania and she moved to Massachusetts. And so we were still like 6 hours apart and would get together all the time. So she and I created that special bond. And yet with each sister or brother, I can sit down and kind of know what their personality is and what we do have in common. And so there's a bond there. We may not be on the same level on different topics, I guess, but yeah, there's definitely similar people and quite opposite people in the family, I think. Yeah. It's so fascinating that you would think with two of the same parents that you'd all kind of trickle down, everything would be
Right.
similar, but it's so diverse, which is great. You know, it's
Yeah.
good to have that kind of, it taught me compassion, kindness, inspiration on what they would do or what I could see they could accomplish. So it pushed me too to be better, I think.
That's really sweet. That's all I have for you.
Well, thanks. No, it's fun thinking about it and
Mm.
talking about it because you realize certain things throughout your life, and when you get together with people, but you don't, and it kind of clicks at a time, but you never
Mm.
really talk to anybody about it.
For sure.
Like,
Yeah.
Jeannie, you're really similar to me, you know. But I'm glad it's fun to recognize it and talk about it to
Mm.
somebody that doesn't know anything about it. So thank you.
Mm.
All right, everybody, we are going to conclude on this. My episodes before this was with Dr. Yvonne Kay and Thomas Verdon Marshall and Jake and Clara. So please check out those other episodes. In the future, I'm hoping to speak with my friend Inez, who I worked with in wardrobe, and a friend of mine, Paul Chapikian, who has an amazing life and stories about how situations come into his life where he's either saving a life or helping someone get through a really tough time. It's crazy, but really fun. And we'll see what comes next. Keep watching. And those listening, if you would like to comment about where you're watching from, what you thought of this episode, if there's any helpful tips you have for grieving, or you want to go to Alaska and you need some tips. I'm going to try and put where Caden said she had been, so you can look it up, and I'll have that in the description too. So until next time, thanks again for joining us on Family Dynamic Conversations podcast. Caden, thank you very much, and we'll see you at work. All right.